This episode of the BeanCast is brought to you by Artisanal Agency, the exclusive representative of the This Week in Tech podcast network. Reach Twit.tv's tech-savvy, affluent, highly engaged audience by booking your campaign now. Visit artisanalagency.com to find out more. Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 563. Why is Doritos texting me? For Monday, October 14th, 2019, it's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norp. Thanks for joining us. We all know by now that the public square has gone digital, and the big web platforms have become our venues, many times with troubling consequences. So, does marketing have a moral responsibility here? And what should it be? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, managing our complicity with the ever more intrusive smart TV, starting an in-house agency, the arrival of weather-based cab toppers, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the co-founder of Metaforce, as well as an adjunct professor at NYU, Mr. Alan Adamson. Hi, Alan, what's going on?
Hi, Bob. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be back. Looking forward to chatting.
I am as well. Now, next, he's the co-founder and creative director of brand experience agency Campfire, Mr. Mike Monello. Mike, welcome back.
Thanks for having me on again, Bob. Always a pleasure.
And finally, we have the president and chief creative officer for Allscope and board member of Mashburn Enterprises, Mr. Jonathan Sackett. Jonathan, hi, what's going on?
Bob, it's great to be here, and I have to give a quick shout out to an avid listener of the show, which is my mom. And today is her birthday, and she has beaten cancer twice.
Wow, so, happy birthday.
Yes.
Happy
birthday, Kathy Sackett.
Fantastic. Yeah, best wishes. I know she follows me on Facebook, so I know she's an avid listener and a fan. So
yes, she does.
Well, let's move on to the topics right away. First up, American ideals are based on free and open public discourse and the free exchange of information and ideas. So theoretically, and I put this in quotation marks, theoretically, social media and search platforms and even retail platforms should be a good thing as great equalizers of public life. Except we all know that ain't true because these virtual town halls are not neutral. They're not open venues, but they're rather profit centers. You know, they're businesses that are openly mining these conversations for data gold. Now, the genie is out of the bottle, Mike, and it's doubtful public life can be taken back from the commercial sector. So what is our responsibility as advertisers in achieving marketing goals in this arena? It seems like we have a big moral responsibility that we're shirking here, aren't we?
100%. I mean, we have to take more responsibility for how we use these platforms and all the data that we're mining from them. You know, the thing is that as marketers and advertising, we're so far ahead of public policy and consumer awareness, frankly, that it really demands that we take a more ethical approach. And it's really sad to see, like every time I see a violation of just common decency and ethics on the platforms, it makes me sad because we all know that's just going to end up causing regulation. And frankly, at the very least, we have to ensure that as policy and public opinion catch up, and they're going to catch up, that we're already at the beginning of that backlash, that we don't end up damaging our clients and our own businesses. And that's just really on us. And I look at this whole thing, I think this is all we're in the beginnings of a cultural shift, right? And as marketers, it's our job to understand the cultural forces at play. And if we back out and we look at shows like Silicon Valley and movies like Joker and Elizabeth Warren's popularity surge as she comes out strong against abuses on these platforms, this backlash is in its infancy, and Facebook and Twitter and marketers who are abusing these for-profit platforms do not have a strong case to make for backing away and pretending they can't or shouldn't control what gets posted to the platforms, or especially when the platforms are making money or they're being paid directly to post it in the case of advertising. So it's a, the tide is changing, and we need to be ready for it.
Something that I mean, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, especially when we're talking about the people who are abusers. But what about the people who aren't abusers, Jonathan? The people who are out there just using the platforms normally as marketers, just taking advantage of this data mining gold that we have at our advantage, and we're playing by the rules. Do we have a moral responsibility in this equation as well to stand up a little bit more firmly for the rights of individuals on these platforms, and to make sure that the platforms are taking accountability and responsibility for these offenses?
No.
Okay, well, there you go.
Well, I'm more concerned that Mike said he's sad, and I like Mike, and I don't want him to feel sad. Mike, you okay over there?
I'll muddle through.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think, look, there's a moral and an ethical responsibility in everything that we do. I just think that everything to me is usually on a continuum. And, it's always funny to me, and I know I've brought this up a million times. People don't care about data breaches and stuff until it directly impacts them. That's part of the challenge, is that people, every time you get a recommendation on something online, it's because you're being watched. So until it affects you in a negative way, it doesn't seem to bother anybody.
Well, right. I mean, it's just like there's a good case to be made, and we've made this case on the show over the last few weeks about the fact that consumers want to have more targeting. They want to have more relevant advertising. They just don't want you to be tracking them all the time, which is like a conundrum,
Well, exactly. And I think, the truth of the matter is that I think it helps out advertisers in the long run, the more whistleblowers that come out against things like the NSA, because it's one thing to recommend product B because you bought product A. It's quite a different thing that you're listening to my cell phone conversations, which puts me in a very, very bad light with the government, let me tell you.
Alan, I'd love your thoughts on this as well. When we're talking about the moral responsibility of advertisers, when we're engaging with these big platforms and all the data power that come with it, should we be actively using these platforms when we know that they are they're being cavalier with the user information, and they're not adequately protecting free speech and the opportunities that are available via the public square typically, but now have been brought to the digital platforms?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's come to a head yet, because I don't think most consumers really understand how much of their life is an open book, if you would.
That's right.
So when I search for something on Amazon and 10 seconds later it shows up on Instagram, it doesn't bother most people. But I just think they don't really understand how much data until marketers or advertisers, cross the line, and and then it's already an avalanche, and then pulling it back, because lots of these advertisers and marketers are getting addicted to that type of data. And once you have that data and it's helping you drive your sales, it's harder to go back to the future.
Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, let's face it, we want the convenience. We want things to be known, mentioned. We want things to be reinforced. We want cross-pollination. We want them to tell us that, hey, because you looked at this, you should probably look at this. We want that type of convenience. Now, there's a cost to that convenience. So who is the onus and the responsibility on for transparency here? Because, as advertisers and as professionals in this industry, we're the middlemen. We're not the ones. If the data is there, we're going to use it to our advantage to better target, and the consumer wants that as well. But like I said, it's a dual-edged sword, and the average consumer is not knowledgeable enough about the type of data or the extent of the data that's being captured.
Good points all. This story came
I
up
want
in.
to challenge. Hold on. Hey,
Go,
Bob.
go, go
I
for it,
want to
Mike.
challenge that though, because I think the idea that consumers don't know and they don't care as long as they're not affected has been true. But I really do believe the tide is turning on that, and I think we're seeing that in the Russian hacking story, which is obviously not the the entire reason Trump won. But I think people are becoming more aware of how these platforms are manipulating public discourse. And data is one aspect of that. And the story of the Russian hacking is making people understand fully the extent to which the data is being captured. And I think that's why, and like I said, when you look at the way culture is moving with tech companies and tech entrepreneurs being the bad guys now in pop culture, we're seeing that awareness play out, and we're only at the beginning of that. So
I think that
a change.
No, I'm sorry. I hear your point, and I think you're right. But I also think it's flavor of the month, because this goes back a long ways. But when the digital platforms and Google was launching Gmail, the big news was Google's going to read your email accounts, and everybody was, oh, I'll never sign up for that, and everybody said it because it was flavor of the month. Where's Gmail now? So I think as soon as that story goes away, so does the caring.
Although the third rail, I think, could be the political one. Where I don't really get that upset if somebody knows I like this tuna fish versus that tuna fish, and how'd they find it out by reading my emails or listening to my phone calls or just knowing that I hang out at a tuna fish shop.
This guy likes tuna.
Exactly. But all of a sudden,
I wonder what kind of bread he likes. Let's ask him.
If it's getting into that third rail of politics, and the country is so polarized, and there is so much misinformation, and most consumers, as everyone knows, now get their primary source of information from these digital platforms. There is no alternative channel to be the arbitrator of real news and quote unquote not real news.
Yeah, that brings up one of the big stories this week that brought up this conversation in the first place, because Facebook changed its terms of service this week to no longer prohibit false ads from politicians. They still require you not to have patently false ads for any product, but they didn't want to get involved with policing political, machinations and lies and other types of things. Does this protect digital publics, the digital public square, Mike, or is it hurting it more? You were going to say something anyway. I hope this dovetails into what you were going to say.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we have to stop calling Facebook and Twitter a digital public square. They're advertising companies, and we need to start calling them advertising companies.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
How they make money.
That's true. That's true, Mike. They are companies. They are for-profit companies, but they are our digital square. I mean, they are.
But they're advertising companies.
You're right.
We need to start calling them advertising companies. See, I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, right? They compare like television advertising and the way that a candidate might put a false ad on TV. But TV is mass media. And when we sit in front of TV, the context in which we receive those messages, we're very aware that someone paid to put those messages in front of us. That is not, when you take Facebook and we say, okay, Facebook's mission, they say, is to connect the world and let people share ideas and share. And then you throw paid advertising in the mix, especially paid advertising that's unchecked. We're not used, the context in which the information comes to us on Facebook is radically different than print or TV and radio ads. And I think it needs to be treated that way. We need to acknowledge that these are not the rules, the same rules do not apply.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, Bob? I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
Do you guys ever watch or listen to the Joe Rogan podcast?
I do not.
Okay. Well, he had one of the executives of Twitter on there, and amongst other people. But it was interesting because they were challenging her on, tweets getting taken down or removed or not allowed to be published, and people getting removed from Twitter and stuff. And they were exposing to her the hypocrisy that is Twitter. And the thing about it is that I heard in an interview once with Denzel Washington, and I personally buy into this. He said, if you listen to the media, or if you don't listen to the media, you're uninformed, and if you do listen to the media, you're misinformed. I think there's whatever we refer to Facebooks and Twitters of the world, they are influencers, and they are run by people, and people typically have agendas. So sifting through that gets pretty murky. But that was an absolutely good point, Mike. I think that was yours, wasn't it? These places, these publications, these whatever that we're referring to them as, they are out there to make money. And it's the same thing that Jamal always says about the NBA. The NBA is a marketing firm that happens to do basketball.
And I want to tag on to that because
Sure.
what you're bringing up the fact that television and print media have a checkered past as well. I mean, we managed to somewhat ameliorate some of the problems of mass media by regulating it in I don't know if effective is the right word, but we've managed to regulate them a little bit to bring about some kind of equality of voice and some kind of clear delineation between opinion and fact when it's being presented.
Yeah, like sponsored content, right?
Right. So, I mean, do we need to demand something like that for Facebook and Twitter and all the other platforms? Because it's just like what I'm coming down to is that Twitter and Facebook are our public squares now. Whether or not they are advertising companies, they are an advertising company. I know that all these social platforms are advertising companies, but we have made them, we've imbued them with the power of being the public square, just like we imbued the power of television and newspapers to be our public square at a certain point in the past. Now, we can argue that the digital platforms are a lot more powerful and a lot more troublesome, but they still are a public square. So how do we maintain that public debate in a for-profit arena?
Yeah, the precedent was, of course, in the Mad Men days that TV stations needed a license, radio stations needed a license. I don't think newspapers needed a license, and to get that license, there was some consciousness in terms of what you could air on your platform, in your square. And I think now the challenge is, of course, and people grew up during that Mad Men era, they tended to believe that most of the ads were, probably stretching it, but generally okay, But now I think depending on the age segment, you ask consumers, is everything you read on Facebook and Twitter true? I think, it's astounding how many people would say, yeah, because my neighbor told me and I believe my neighbor, or Debbie told me. And I think they are potentially more believable platforms because...
No, let's keep Debbie out of this, man.
Anyway, so I think the risk is greater because I think consumer acceptance of everything said in a town square as being truthful is higher than it was in the Mad Men days when you were sitting on the couch watching a TV.
Very true in a lot of respects. Mike, a lot of people have chosen to take the position that we need to abandon platforms like Facebook as a result of some of the steps that they've taken and some of the mistakes that they've made. Is that really a tenable solution, considering the fact that so much of the public discourse is happening on Twitter and on Facebook and to a certain extent with Google and search? I mean, it's like, is it really reasonable to abandon these platforms, or do we need to embrace them and make them better? What's your opinion on that?
Well, ideally we'd embrace them and make them better, and stay away from the murkier, darker aspects of it. But, is any brand really going to suffer if they stop advertising on Facebook? I mean, most of it is completely ineffective anyways. Very few marketers seem to use it properly. This seems like there's a lot of money being spent throwing a lot of useless content onto the platforms. And I don't necessarily think that brands would do wrong to pull back on a lot of that, and maybe rethink the platforms and the use of the platforms. But yeah, I think that we have a responsibility to our clients to steer them in the right direction. And I think that, to Jonathan's point, I think we should use the platform, but we should do it in a way that we understand that we can defend, I think, as people learn more about them. And that's kind of the measure that I would look at it is it defensible? Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, and the tricky part of it is it's a more expensive approach to try to drag customers to where you want them to be versus going where they are. And it's a tough non-sell if you say, well, here's the supposed Facebook statistics around your audience and what their behaviors are, or their web experience, what are they doing online, et cetera. Facebook and these other guys, they're hard to ignore. Now, whether you can convert, whether it's just an awareness play or if it's just a contextual play, that's the question. But you're absolutely right. It's just it's hard to, when your client's sitting across from you and with cannabis, for example, going legal here in Illinois. I'm in Chicago. With that going legal, and that's going to change a lot of the advertising rules around that. And if your audience is on Facebook, it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's why I think this is one of the reasons we're seeing such a push in budgets towards experiential. This idea that kind of like, oh, well, maybe if you hold some big
That's
event
right.
that captures a lot of buzz and people post about it organically, that'll actually do better. That might be a better way to spend the money than throwing up, pieces of content, ephemeral content on Facebook.
Well, that's right. And if you put something out there in the eosphere and somebody's grabbing it and sharing it and the right person grabs it and shares it, you tell those numbers to the client and they'll say, do that again.
Well, I want to challenge one thing though. The assumption that ads don't work on Facebook, that ads don't work on Twitter, they do work. They work really well from all accounts that I've gotten from marketers out there. I mean,
some of them do, Bob. Some of them do, not all of them. I mean, I've done, I've done, for instance, Twitter and Facebook ads trying to drive to, say, people to consume a podcast. Utter failure. Doesn't work.
Right, because you've been involved with that Shutter podcast, right?
Yeah, and there are other examples. So it's not always it's not an always sure thing. It really depends on what it is what you're trying to get people to buy or to do at that moment when they are on the Facebook platform.
Yeah, and nothing. Let's face it, we're all professionals. Nothing is 100%. We know that. But I think what happens is it's content, it's context, and it's also creative. So, what exactly are we selling? How are we selling it? Where? Is the objective just to move the dog dish an inch at a time till the dog eats on the rug? So we say, hey, just come here and register with us and get free cannabis. I guarantee we'd get a really good net result on that on Facebook. Can't do that, of course, but a lot of it comes down to your creative approach as well. So, nothing's 100%, but again, how are you going about it? And is it saying, here, buy these wool socks? Or is it saying, hey, register to win something? Different platforms, different places, different approaches. That's what you got to weed through. Everything isn't the same. And I said weed in the same sentence almost as cannabis. Think about that.
You did quite well. Well, we're going to move on to talk next about another digital platform that's causing a lot of raised eyebrows, the connected TV. Apparently, it's watching us more than we even suspected, even though a lot of us suspected quite a bit. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor. Okay, all you brands out there, all you brands big and small, as well as all you media buyers out there who know and love them, I've got a great way to connect with arguably the best technology-minded audience out there. Our sponsor, Artisanal Agency, is the exclusive representative for Twit.tv, one of the most prestigious tech podcasting networks out there. And they want to help you reach their extremely lucrative listeners. And let me tell you, they are very, very lucrative. Now, it's safe to say that the BeanCast wouldn't be what it is today without Twit, because it was Twit.tv and their flagship show, This Week in Tech, that inspired me more than any other podcast when I was just getting started doing this. And I've been a loyal listener of their shows for over a decade now. They're entertaining, they're informative, and there's a variety of awesome programming. I listen to MacBreak Weekly every single week. I listen to iOS Today. And of course, I listen to This Week in Tech. And that's just 3 of their amazing shows. I mean, they've got so much going on at this network, and it's jaw-dropping when you consider their numbers. I mean, 50 million downloads a year. That's quite the number when you're talking about podcasts. 70% of that audience directly works in tech, and 82% of them say that they have bought a product directly as the result of a twit.tv ad recommendation. And let's make sure we focus on that last point just for a minute, because they are offering an actual live read recommendation here. And they take that responsibility very seriously. Not just anyone can advertise on twit.tv, because Artisanal Agency will vet you. They'll vet every sponsor so that their tech journalist hosts can offer an honest, wholehearted recommendation on your behalf. And the best part about that, the fact that they're vetting their sponsors, is that you can relax knowing there won't be any brand safety issues. You're not going to be associated with somebody that you really don't want to be associated with, or somebody that's going to cause a lot of problems for you down the line. Now, whether you're coming with a completely baked campaign or you need help trying to get your graphics together or your ad copy, Artisanal Agency offers a completely hands-on approach, helping you at every stage. They ensure your campaigns run seamlessly, from onboarding hosts to delivering creative assets to monitoring ad reads for you. So reach out today and start your campaign on the twit.tv network. Visit artisanalagency.com. That's artisanalagency.com to find out more, or email hello@artisanalagency.com. That's hello@artisanalagency.com. Start your next podcast ad campaign with a show from Twit, and we thank the Twit Network for their very generous and wonderful support of the BeanCast. Well, speaking of data-hungry monsters, we all know television is on this game in a big way too, especially through smart TVs and connected TV devices. But a recent investigation into the data practices of the units found that it may be way more invasive than consumers realized. Alan, let's just agree that data collecting TV units should, but won't, disclose their practices more transparently to consumers. What is our responsibility as marketers in using this data, knowing that there's not a lot of transparency going on in the collection of it?
Well, I think it's going to keep on ratcheting up until somebody or a group of people cross that line into something that's so unbelievable it gets shared and everyone gets super pissed off. I think most consumers.
But should we wait for that though? I mean,
no, I don't think so. But most consumers are still, as we were talking earlier, if Target has a data breach and they have my credit, I don't shop at Target, so I'm not that upset. So I think most consumers are in a place. All right, so they know I watch Family Guy at the gym. Who cares? I think they're still stuck in that, headset to say, well, they can tell when I'm watching it. And all right, that's been going on for years. But I just don't think the majority of consumers have a clue as to how much is being sucked out of their house, whether it's Alexa listening or the smart TV that's getting pretty close to Alexa, or your phone.
Yeah, that's true and all. But Mike, I hear you kind of breathing, ready to jump in on this. Yeah, you're right, Alan. People do not know about what's going on behind the scenes in data collection, but it doesn't matter whether they know or not. Shouldn't we know that this is going on? So we as marketers, shouldn't we be, a little bit more proactive? Mike, you were going to say something?
Yeah, look, I think there's twofold. There's a lot of people who will say, well, if we don't use it, our competitors will, and they'll have more effective advertising or whatnot. I really feel like the industry needs to figure out how to come together and maybe decide what ethical data collection means and how we might be able to certify, if that's even possible, how to certify ethical data collection, so that we're only using data that's collected in a way that we all agree is the appropriate way. I think it's, you look, there's so much fraud out there on all this data, that it's really hard to regulate, but it's coming. And I wish the industry would kind of self-regulate it. But I don't have any hope that it will.
Farrah Bostic comes on the show quite a bit. She has always said, and I know the listeners are probably going to roll their eyes that I'm quoting Farrah's famous ethics quote again, but she's like, lawyers and doctors have to go through ethics reviews every few years. They have to go and take a refresher course on the ethics of their profession. Should advertising have an ethics rule where we have to pass some kind of ethical test in the things that we do? Jonathan, I mean, you've probably heard me ask this question before. It just keeps coming up over and over again. Do we need to have some kind of ethical practice, like Mike was saying, where we can certify that the data was collected cleanly?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Here's my 2 cents worth on it. I think I compare ethics in our industry to taking steroids in sports. The thing about it is that steroids and enhancements and illegal enhancements are, if everybody's doing it, it comes down to who's going to get caught or who's going to whistleblow it or who's going to do something about it. I think we have to be human first, and to hope for governance over something is waiting too long. But you're absolutely right when you said that any CMO that's sitting across the table from me is going to say, how can I get more data, right data, faster data than the competition? And that's what it comes down to. And it's sad, but if everybody's doing it, then we're all guilty. And I don't think taking a test of governance or a test from governance that says, Jonathan Sackett, are you in your agency system, are you guys ethical? We're people first, and we'd better be ethical. And when I'm talking to somebody across the table from me, a CMO, a president, a CEO, whatever, I'll tell them, look, this is what they're collecting, and this is what we know. The question
But
is for them
we're
to
marketers.
answer, not for me.
We're marketers, and we should know better. But more importantly, we're objective-based profession. I mean, we have objectives, and we activate on those objectives with the tactics that we use. So why are we collecting data with no objective? I mean, really, there is no objective in most of the data collection going on with a smart TV.
Yeah, I agree with
it's
that.
a blanket, just grab everything you can and figure out what we need later.
Because somebody might want it, and I'll be able to sell it, maybe.
You never know.
Right, and
that's right.
and that's not only stupid from a standpoint of like from the optics standpoint, if you get caught doing it, as these vendors are now getting caught doing these types of things. But more importantly, you're opening yourself up to the legal liabilities if that data gets compromised. Why would you pull data for no objective reason, no matter what the long-term benefit was? I mean, it makes no sense because it's like a ticking time bomb that you're collecting in so many ways. Nobody?
On the optimistic side, I think, the pressure on everybody, marketers, advertising, to do the right thing, because everything you do is transparent. And if you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar, you're going to be skewered pretty fast today in the social world, is the positive side. The downside is that very few industries that I've seen that have been effectively regulated by themselves. So, I don't think the car companies would have put seatbelts in if they didn't have to. So, nor do I think the tobacco companies would have put warnings on the. So I'm just pessimistic that the industry organizations would come together to try to manage this versus.
Well, yeah. Let's face it. In almost any industry or in almost anything, self-regulation rarely works. I mean, ask the Nazis. I mean,
so
I think.
What is the end game then? It's just like, is it ethical usage or government policing?
Who's going to argue with this crappy sentence? More data is gooder.
More data more data has always been the mantra of marketing, that the more we know, the better we can target, the more effective we can be. But more data does not always mean better in a society that has so much data. I mean, it's just like we have our pick of the litter of data. Why not just be objectively based about selecting the data that's most important and preserving the privacy of the users in other cases?
Most of it is always going to fall into the so what. So I know that Bob, eats Doritos at 3 a.m. So it doesn't really help me. And AI is not going to answer that question for most of the data. You'll still need people to say, well, what does this mean and what are the implications? So I think ultimately you can collect it, you can build it, but how marketers use it is still limited by, I think, the creative, strategic, insight driven, if you can't answer the so what, and I just don't believe data can answer the so what.
Well, I don't want to sound jealous, but I want to know how the hell you know Bob eats Doritos at 3 a.m.
Exactly.
I'm interested in hearing. I'm interested in hearing about how Bob gets woken up by a text message coupon from Doritos at 3 a.m.
I think we just closed the loop on that one. Perfect.
Okay, text message from Doritos, now the show title. Mike, maybe you can answer that question I asked a couple minutes ago. What's the end game? I mean, is it ethical usage or government policing? I mean, which is going to solve this problem? Or either of them going to solve this problem in the end?
I can't remember who said it, but I do think it's something really bad is going to happen before it gets solved. And I'm sure it'll be some combination of regulation and some people feeling like maybe certain data gets too toxic to handle and they just walk away from it. But look, if I knowingly buy stolen goods off the back of a truck, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of a crime. And I feel like with data, I would like to see companies that use data that is not collected ethically or collected in a way that consumers are really not understanding of. Because all the data collectors obfuscate their permissions. They don't make them understandable, and that's on purpose. And nobody wants to talk about ethical data collection because we all know that's going to make the myth of all of this incredible data fall apart, and it's going to make it hard, and it's going to be harder to sell to clients. So I'd like to see companies that use bad data, unethical data, be liable for it in some way.
Like they were buying stuff off a truck. Yep.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that data is stolen, even if somebody did click a giant legal agreement to get, a coupon before and didn't read all 39 pages. I think that's just not. I think that's unethical, and I'd like to see something done about it. And I'd like to see companies stand up and take a stand for it. I mean, right now, Apple seems to be the only one.
Well, this is a topic that has many, many thorns and many, many twists and turns. I'm sure we'll be back again talking about it soon, but I want to move on and talk next about the in-house agency, because we've talked a lot on the show about the existential threat to agencies that in-housing by brands represents. But tonight, I want to consider the converse thought. Jonathan, how can in-housing actually be a blessing in disguise for agencies, or can it be? What's the positives about in-housing that maybe the agency world is ignoring?
Well, I mean, a lot of it. See, herein lies the rub. That now I have built in-house agencies for Mashburn Enterprises, right?
Right.
The thing about it is and again, this is no pat on the back to me or anybody else, but that in-house agency is only going to be as good as who builds it. And just like your agency is the advertising agency that you're working with is only as good as the people who are in it or the people that are assigned to your account. An agency itself isn't inherently good or bad. There's good and bad people within good and bad teams. And if you have, all it takes, first of all, is the wrong person to build that in-house capability. We go through that with our clients every day. Hey, take a look at what we're trying to hire for, this position, that position, and we're like, okay, but hold on a second, what for? Like, what's the balance of power? What's the handoffs? What's the whatever? And are you good enough and qualified enough to hire those people? Now, for agencies like us, for example, that are kind of straddling the line, we're both an in-house agency in some cases and an advertising agency out there in others. With partners, what ends up happening is those people sitting across from you at the in-house side of the agency, are they good enough? And historically, they've the conversation has been around, they're not good enough, and the good people aren't going to want that position because the best people in the industry don't want to work on one singular account. Okay, now the good news for us is it makes us hire around that. So if they're going to build a tech an ad serving unit, whatever in-house, whatever they're going to build, we're going to build around that. And that's good for us because it gives us specific verticals. It gives us specific talent pools that we can pull into other accounts, et cetera. That's what's good for the agencies themselves if your client partner is building that in-house capability. But it's only going to be as good as the person qualified or not qualified to hire those people. And that's the challenging part. Because I've had partners come to me and say, well, here's the guy we hired for advertising or something. And then
Right.
we look at their resume and they never did it.
Well, I like what you're saying, that it really comes down to the people who you're hiring and making sure that you have the right team or the right leader to build that team in-house. But there's always the fact that some people burn out over time, and sometimes people leave and you get new people in-house. That happens in agencies, and when a client reaches that point where they're no longer satisfied with the work, Alan, they fire the agency and they go hire another person. They hire another agency to bring in their talent and get new ideas. If you're hiring in-house and in-housing the agency, how does the client deal with this investment in people and infrastructure over time? I mean, you can't just let everybody fire everybody and start over again, can you?
Yeah, no, it's like any other. The theory is incredibly simple. The execution's incredibly hard. The best agencies, be they outside agencies or inside groups, are defined by talent and culture. Do they have the best people and are they juiced? And the advantage many in-house agency structures have, while they don't have the advantage we just discussed of being able to offer you 20 different types of projects to work on, they do have the checkbook. When I was at Landor, we were not losing talent to other branding firms. We were losing it to Google, Facebook, and Apple. And so they were just paying so much more. The problem was that the business model for many agencies is not able to compensate at a competitive level for the best people. So often we were losing talent. Well, we had great, interesting projects, but there was a 50% gap between what we could put peanuts on a table and what client organizations could. And I think in the real world, money still talks.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's also, we can't forget about dynamics because, you've heard the old adage, the old speech of why dream teams don't work. And the thing about it is that getting that right personality, right skill set, right talent, and to work that as a team and as a unit, knowing that there's going to be turnover, knowing that there's going to be new challenges, knowing that there's going to be emerging technologies that you're going to have to, either acquire or get a better understanding of, that's the trick. The dynamics of it's hard. It's hard enough on the agency side for people who have been on it. You guys, I've been a chief at Martin and Ogilvy and DDB, but the thing about it is that we had the same challenges internally because are you getting the right dynamic for the position? And we're used to dealing with agency people. Client side is a much, much different beast. And you just throw somebody who's got a great resume and a great agency experience and you throw them client side, that's a big gamble.
Yeah, it really is. What about the cooperation side of things, Mike? I mean, I'm not sure if you've ever had, I'm assuming that you have had this opportunity to work with an in-house agency as an external agency partner. What's the best case scenario for that kind of relationship, and how can the client build an in-house shop that facilitates that kind of relationship if they want to have that kind of relationship going forward?
Yeah, well, to what's interesting is, I've never set up in-house agencies for brands, but I can talk about my experience, and my experience has been that, in a fascinating way, we are more deeply in partnership with our clients, especially the clients who have built up some traditional agency expertise in-house than we ever have before, and it's forced us to adjust kind of the way we work. We tend to show work at a much earlier stage nowadays than we did before because we're collaborating much more. And it's been amazing. We've actually, as a more specialized agency, we've never been busier. And a lot of it is because our clients now have certain in-house capabilities that probably, frankly, belong more in-house, like strategy. And so we partner with an in-house strategist who not only understands the product, but understands the internal dynamics of the company, and we're able to get so much more interesting work through the door, out the door, and in the public sphere. So, personally for us, it's been fantastic, and it's been really, really easy to collaborate with in-house agency partners because we're not competing for business. They're coming to us because we actually do things that they don't have the capability to do in-house. And I think that's the key for agencies, is to make sure that they're keeping up with what capabilities are going in-house and which ones are they still need to partner with externally.
That's some really good advice. Jonathan, you mentioned the pitfalls to a certain extent, but what other pitfalls can you expect if you're building an in-house shop? I mean, since you have that direct experience, how do you keep your talent engaged? How do you keep them excited about the work, especially considering that you're probably not working on the big ad campaign. You're probably working on the coupons and circulars and other types of, less exciting creative work.
No, that's a good point. I think what we've been able to do is I think a lot of it comes down to dynamics. I mean, I think everybody historically wants to make that awesome Super Bowl commercial, right? And chances are, if you're in-house on the client side, you're probably not going to get that opportunity. And again, that's generalizing, but that's my experience. I think the other thing is not understanding really what your objectives are and what you're hiring for. I like it. Mike, I'm sorry, was that Mike or Alan that said they work with good strategy people that are hired in-house? Is that Mike?
Yes, that was me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The challenge that I've had historically is when I'm building teams, I've had to build, first of all, on the agency side, I've had to build digital practices from scratch, for example. And then now, with Mashburn Enterprises and with Allscope, I've had to build the same thing all over again. So number one, you got to allow them the freedom so that they can come up with other things. What is there's so many things right now. Cannabis is top of mind because that's what I'm launching with Revolution here in Chicago. There's a little plug for my friends at Revolution. But what ends up happening is, how do you find the right dynamics of the person, and how do you give them the freedom to say, look, there's so many laws around cannabis right now that you can and can't advertise it. You can and can't talk about CBD or THC or whatever. You've got to give them the latitude for creativity so that they're also, a tech guy is empowered to come up with an idea. What you find typically in big advertising agencies is you're not allowed the freedom. So that's the downside of it. It's like, well, no, you're a tech guy, or you're a creative guy, or you're an account guy, and you're an account guy, so nobody's going to listen to you. So at least if you can give them the freedom to come up with answers and build a real round table of creativity, that has been the golden ticket for me personally, because the tech guy is just as empowered to come up with ideas as the account guy. And if you can allow that type of freedom, you're going to attract better people that will take lesser pay. That's what I've found.
I agree. And also, I think if you're building an in-house agency, I think that in-house agency has to have a mandate that's much broader than an external agency partner, right? Because the internal agency could be involved in every step of product development, consumer experience, and not just be isolated into, say, communications.
Oh, great,
and I think
great
if you're
point.
building
Great.
an in-house agency for that, to do that, I think you can attract the kind of great talent that's interested in all of those opportunities within an organization. But if it's just an in-house agency that's doing the same thing an advertising agency would do, but only for a specific group of products, I don't see that. That typically doesn't last or work.
That's a really great point, because I believe in that whole operationalized branding approach where brand touches everything in marketing, and it should infuse every operational paradigm within an organization. So great.
Yeah, and it's hard for most agencies on the outside to get that sort of intimacy across many, many organizations to deliver that, and that's another tension point.
Well, yeah, and if you're working inside of client side, I would argue that probably most times you have a vested interest, right? If you're on the agency side, your vested interest is to hopefully do great work. If you're on the inside and your bonus or whatever is dependent upon it, that great work is executed, you might have a stronger will, a more willingness to listen to other people or to get that objective done, right?
Yeah. Well, we're going to move on to our final topic of the evening. Weather-based targeting is now available through Firefly's digital cab toppers. Alan, we've talked about this when it was first announced, but does this now that it's a reality, does it offer long-term benefits, or is it mostly just a magic trick that most marketers will never really master effectively? What's
I
your
think
prediction?
it's a shiny new object that will last. It sounds great, but how many marketers really will be tied to that and find it effective? I think it's
well, it depends on whether or not how effective the programmatic system is they put behind it. So if you put in triggers that say when the temperature goes above 95 degrees in this area, we start promoting Coke ads on top of these cabs, or if it's raining,
the
we
pollen
start
counts up, so you can sell the
or if it's predictive, right? I think you hit the nail on the head. We've been working with the Weather Channel .com for years that helps us trigger and traject. The weather's going to be bad in this area, and we've got some guys who install HVAC. They'll know what the weather, how to anticipate and properly utilize that. I do think that, Bob, to your point, it will be viewed a little bit more as a trick because it's got to be used in the right way. So help me God, if one of those things says, "Hey, it's raining outside, buy Twizzlers," I don't know if that's going to be very effective.
Oh yeah, but even if you are appropriate, even if you are like it's raining and you're selling totes umbrellas or something like that, or Shed Rain, which is my favorite brand of umbrella, by the way. You got to go check out Shed Rain. But even if you're doing it correctly, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be effective. You really need to think through. I mean, we have all these triggers and targets for regular banner ads on websites, and look how effective those are. So many of them are just trash and noise, and I'm wondering how much effectiveness is going to be able to be generated from these cab toppers, simply based on the fact that the creative doesn't match up to the technology.
Well, yeah, and I think, and as well, is if it's predictive, if it's triggered based upon these variables for this geo target, for this age range, and this font size, so that people over a certain age can read it. If those things are truly in place and the smart marketers get in there and use it, it will be effective. But again, I don't know what the algorithm is going to be behind it for those variables alone, let alone more. I mean, there's more variables out there than just that, of course.
Yeah. Well,
it's not going to be more effective than a bodega owner putting a stand full of umbrellas outside in front of his bodega when it's raining. I mean, I don't know. I kind of look at it and go, I think the predictive aspect that Jonathan was talking about is really interesting. And, if you've got enough time there, it's going to rain later today, you bring your umbrella. If not, go around the corner and pick one up from here. Something might be interesting if we can get that granular about it. But I feel like this is another one of those things. It's like the more data we have, the more we realize we still don't know. And I hear people talk about, like Bluetooth beacons that will ping someone's phone when they're in the juice aisle. And it's like, well, if I'm in the juice aisle looking for pineapple juice and you're pinging me with a coupon for orange juice, I don't care. You're a nuisance. You're not helping me. And I think there's a lot of instances where, just because we have this data doesn't mean we're ever actually going to be able to use it effectively.
Fair point. And with that, it's time for the fair, fail, foul. But before we do that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug for themselves. Starting with Alan Adamson, you can find him at metaforce.co. That's the home of his consultancy that he co-founded. Tell us what's going on in your world, Alan. What would you like to promote?
Well, at Metaforce, it's a pretty simple game. Part of the trick for marketing any product is to figure out what needs to get done and not do everything, but do two things great. So we still have a good time looking at challenges. There are marketers who are doing 10 things averagely and saying, let's figure out how to do 1 or 2 things great before we do 10 things averagely. So the theory is simple, and if you can get clients to focus and do a few things great, it's a lot of fun.
And I was really impressed by everything I saw with your company, so it's pretty amazing. If you're interested in that, check out metaforce.co. Next up, we have Mike Monello. You can find him at campfirenyc.com, one of my favorite agencies in the experience area. Tell us, Mike, what's going on in your world? What would you like to promote?
We've been really, really busy lately with lots of great stuff. You check out campfirenyc.com to get the latest news. And if you're looking for something beyond the usual experience, give us a shout. And I just want to promote a personal project real quick. Something that I released last year, but it's October 13th, so we're back in the season for it. A scripted fiction horror podcast that my creative partner Nick Bracci and I created for AMC and Shudder. It's on iTunes and wherever you get podcasts. It's called Video Palace, and it's a scary, spooky story, perfect for this time of year.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I know you guys got a lot of great feedback and a lot of great praise for that. So, definitely check it out if you're into the horror genre. Last but not least, we have Jonathan Sackett. You can find him at allscope.com, also mashburnenterprises.com. Tell us what's going on in your world, Jonathan.
Oh my God, there's so many things going on. First and foremost, I'd like to say happy birthday to my mom again, who I know is an avid listener. So Kathy Sackett, happy birthday. And I'm glad she's healthy. Secondly, I'm a big believer in this show. I love the BeanCast. I love Bob. I love Bob more than he'll ever know. So I hope people listen and share the show because I think it's great. Follow me on Twitter at Jonathan Sackett. We've got some great work coming out with our Revolution Cannabis partner here out of Chicago, Illinois. They're technically called Revolution Global, so please look them up. Know that we're redoing the website as well, so that please don't blame that on me. And follow Jamal Mashburn, one of my many partners, one of my longtime partners, and we've got a book coming out for him. He was just on CNBC. I was on there too, but you can't find me, but you can certainly find him. So if you do a search for Jamal Mashburn, CNBC, that's why we were in New York this week at the New York office. Things are going great. So I hope you watch Jamal. I hope you follow me on Twitter. I hope you look into Allscope, and I hope you do business with my friends on the show.
That's fantastic. That's very comprehensive.
There you go. And I didn't even write that down. Can you believe it?
That's amazing. Well, you've been on the pitch circuit, so I'm not surprised. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, the fair. The producers of the two-night theatrical experience Harry Potter and the Cursed Child engineered a complete takeover of every screen in Times Square for a monumental promotion of their expansion into 3 more global markets for a total of 6. Mike, I've seen takeovers before, but this was pretty amazing what they managed to accomplish. I mean, they worked with all the different billboard companies, all the different digital sign companies. They had 51 different screens that were all synced together. I got to imagine this was a nightmare to put, into motion.
It was completely impressive, particularly from a media standpoint, right? I mean, I've noticed in the video they had notified tons of Harry Potter fans to come out there. You had people in cosplay and whatnot, which was the perfect kind of people you want reacting to it in Times Square. I'm not sure what it did for them in terms of creating awareness in those other areas.
Well, from what I read, the people they invited were Potter influencers to begin with. So, I mean, I imagine they've got some kind of bump from people talking about it in their blogs and spreading the word and sharing their videos.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah, I would assume that the initiative itself probably, how much awareness did that really provoke? But I'm sure the sharing aspect of it went through the roof because it logistically it was impressive, I thought, just to put that together. But to really make it happen and have an impact, I wonder how much that cost.
And talking to the last point we just made, they did it right in Times Square, and lots of people in Times Square, guess what they're doing? They're going to the theater.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the fail for this week, it sucks to be publicists. They posted very poor third quarter earnings, prompting many investors to speculate this was a sign of bad news for the entire agency sector. But then, to add insult to injury, Jonathan, the analysts eased everyone's fears by saying essentially, no, it's not, the whole agency sector being bad. It's just publicists being publicists.
Yeah, talk about, hey, insult meet injury. Well, you know what? These poor guys just suck. So let's have pity on them. This isn't indicative of the rest of the industry by any means. It's just those guys. Well, though it's those guys maybe, but those guys are successful in their own right with other things that they're doing. So I do think it's indicative, and I do think it was insult meets injury.
Yeah, it's definitely bad PR for them to have that happen.
It's terrible PR. You can't get worse than that. If somebody goes, hey, you suck, and you go, yeah, I know.
Oh, man. Well, last, the foul of the week. There's a new kind of fraud in town. This one aims squarely at GDPR compliance. The consent string that tells an advertiser and publisher whether a consumer is allowing them to use personal data to target ads. Well, that consent string is being faked, potentially putting advertisers on the hook for hefty GDPR fines, while the fraudsters rake in ill-gotten gains. Alan, I'm looking at this and I'm going, what the heck can you do with this particular situation? Because they can't really ferret it out. I mean, they're finding out about this now after all this time, and they're still not able to.
You set up such a complex system already, and as we said earlier, even for the ones that are signed off on their permission, they have no clue what they're signing off on. So, it just further shows what a mess that whole space is.
Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. You try to say that 3 times fast. Well, anyway, that just about does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.